small till it ain't, till it ain't, till it ain't, till it ain't. I'm building up a wall till it breaks. She hated when I call and it's late. I don't wanna keep you waiting. I hope I never keep you waiting. She think I know it all, but I don't.
Hi, everyone. Welcome back to the Mixtape with Scott, where I, Scott Cunningham, professor of economics at Baylor University, sit down with living economists to hear their personal stories. It's much harder to sit down with economists who are no longer with us, but this is the podcast about the living ones. And the stories are lots of times about school because economists basically have spent their whole lives in school, but our conversations even go back to grade school, and it follows that long, winding, beautiful path that they took to where they are in their career and all the surprises along the way. My guest today is Jessica Brown, a really remarkable labor economist and one of the last PhD students of the late Alan Krueger. She did her PhD at Princeton, and she is now an assistant professor at the University of South Carolina. Princeton, as you know, is one of the key institutions that birthed, sustained, and kind of passed along what we call now the credibility revolution in applied microeconomics. And so much of what we talk about when it comes to Princeton is both that causal inference gene that it sort of got that it has, but also something that I think has over time been a lot clearer to me is that at Princeton you really couldn't easily separate credibility revolution from just the work of the labor economist and this kind of really high quality labor department that they had and still have. And Jessica's sort of someone, as I listen to more and more, just embodied that the best of both of those. Her story is really inspiring. She generously shared what it was like, what Alan Krueger was like, what it was like being his student, what he was like in the classroom, what it meant to lose him. We also talked about growing up in Maine. We talked about her interest in the kinds of games that she played as a kid, how she sort of stumbled her way into economics, and the kind of personality she has with respect to mathematics. And it was all this just, I'd never really had any of those insights, as you can kind of listen to along the way, had she not been so open. And I really appreciated it. And she also talked about her really interesting work on the economics of childcare, which is as much about the family, it is as much about labor as it is about the family. So it was just also just the kinds of things that I think of when I think of Princeton, which is very clear questions relevant to the kinds of things that labor economists care about, and also really the general profession cares about. Meticulous data collected and methodologies used that actually yield real answers. And so I left the conversation just really excited to have talked to her and lit up by the relevance of her work. And I hope you like it too. Thanks so much for being here. Thanks so much for supporting me. This podcast and just listening to it is so much fun to do it and to bring these people stories out and let us all hear them. So thanks a lot, and see you right now, Jessica and Scott. It is my pleasure to have on the podcast someone that I've actually not met, but I think we used to talk a little bit online a little bit, right?
Yes, back when it was called Twitter.
Yeah, back when it was called Twitter. Econ X, I guess, is what it would be now. Jessica Brown. Jessica, thank you so much for being on my podcast.
Thanks for having me.
Can you tell us, for the sake of the listener, your full title and who pays your paycheck?
Sure. I'm Jessica Brown. I'm an assistant professor of economics in the Darla Moore School of Business at the University of South Carolina.
Awesome. Awesome. Okay, before we get started, I was going to do an icebreaker. What's a vacation that you've gone on that still you find kind of lives in your brain and you think about every now and then for some reason or another?
Yeah. So after my fifth year of grad school, so this is between the fifth and sixth year, we went on a trip. We had some airline miles, and so we were kind of just looking where could we get with these airline miles, and we decided to go to Amsterdam because it was somewhere we could get with the miles and not somewhere we had been before. And at the time, we had two little kids, so they were almost three and almost one.
Mm,
And we had the best time. I mean, when you go with little kids, you kind of have to modify the schedule, but it was really fun. We did some things that they would enjoy, some things that we would enjoy. And there's kind of a couple of reasons why it sticks in my mind. And one is that I think a lot of people think that we were crazy. Like, why are you going all this way with two little kids to Amsterdam? And we had the best time. It was so fun. And so, like, that's one reason why it sticks in my mind because I'm just like, no, just take the trip, and it'll be fun. um, and the other reason is because Amsterdam was so family friendly. So I
mm,
often in the United States, I think back about that trip and well, why can't we have that too? Everything because it was so bike friendly. It was also very stroller
uh,
friendly, and a
right.
lot of things were made with kids in mind. There were a couple of restaurants we went to that had playgrounds that were right there. You could see the kids playing, and
Oh, that's
so
cool.
it was a really fun trip.
Oh, wow. Yeah, 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 yeah. I guess if it's super bike friendly, then it's going to be child friendly just because you're going to be walking around and you're going to be rolling around. It's not going to be as crazy with cars and stuff. Oh, yeah, that's cool.
Exactly. Yeah, it wasn't
Oh,
something we thought about before we went, but it was very convenient for us. And especially
oh,
compared to other places in Europe where, in Italy you're walking upstairs and and
right.
a lot of restaurants in other parts of Europe don't even have high chairs. And so it
Uh,
was a great happenstance that we ended up there that ended up being super family friendly. There's also playgrounds. It felt like around every corner. So we
oh,
spent a lot of time
fun.
at playgrounds.
How old were the kids? They were teeny tiny?
Yeah, so they're basically two toddlers. So one was 10 months, and then the other one was just a couple months short of three.
Mm, mm. Oh, that's cool. That's cool. Wait, so, okay. So where did you grow up?
I grew up in Portland, Maine.
Oh, okay. What'd your parents do for a living?
My dad was a traffic engineer, and then my mom, she mostly stayed home. She did a lot of volunteering. When I was a kid, she was, on the PTO. She was eventually on the school board and chair of the school board, junior league, president of the junior league. Um, and eventually she started working in development. And when I was in college, she started working at Big Brothers Big Sisters.
Oh, oh, Portland, Maine. What's that like? What's that like growing up as a kid in Portland, Maine? How big is it?
Oh, I think it was about 100,000 metro. But like the city itself was much smaller than that. It's the biggest city in Maine, but Maine is small, so that doesn't mean a lot. But that does mean, if you're kind of more of like the focal point of activity because it is the big city. So if something does come to Maine, it comes through Portland.
Oh,
And so that part is fun. There's a lot of economic activity, and it's right on the coast. Uh,
you were right by the water. You grew up by
yeah,
the
so yeah. Well, my house wasn't on the water,
But
but
like you're
it is
like
on the water.
you could just go to the ocean in the summers and
Yes,
swim.
absolutely. Yeah.
Is it too cold to swim?
Not for me when I was a kid. I don't know that I'd
Yeah.
do it now.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Right, right. Oh, that must have been amazing. So it was really pretty.
Yeah, I mean, I really didn't appreciate it at all. I was the only place I had lived for my whole life until I
Yeah.
went to college, and so it's all I knew, and so I didn't appreciate that. Oh, this is a super beautiful part of the country. We went to Acadia a couple of times, and I was always my reaction was just I don't get it. Like this is
Mhm.
what everything looks like. What's so
Right, right.
special about this?
Wow.
But now I appreciate it a lot more now that I don't live there anymore. And
Yeah, I bet. Your parents still live there?
they don't. They've moved down to Virginia.
Oh, so you don't have to go up there anymore.
No, I don't go back very often. But we go, we try to go sometimes. I miss Maine in the summer. It's very different from South Carolina in the summer.
Yeah, I bet. Yeah. Well, so did you have any siblings?
I had one sister.
Okay. How close are y'all in age?
We were 18 months apart,
Oh,
so
okay.
pretty close, 2 years apart in school.
Well, what kind of games would y'all play as a kid when you were little?
Oh, I liked cribbage and backgammon, these kind of strategy
Really?
games. And also just kid things, running around the yard with my sister and the neighborhood kids, and
Was the
uh,
whole family a card playing family?
I really did it with my dad. He's the
Oh,
one who
you and
got
your
me
dad
into it.
play you, so you're good at cribbage?
I'm good at cribbage, I guess, as well as you can be. There's certainly a lot
Oh,
of luck involved still, even if you're good.
yeah. Oh, wow. Wow. Uh, well, so what could I have found you doing on a random Saturday when you were a kid, when you were like middle school?
I like to read. I read a lot of fantasy, so I'd read a lot of those. And I also liked, I had these like subscriptions to puzzle magazines, and so I would do those. It's funny because they had a lot of different kinds of puzzles in them, but one of the ones that they had was Sudokus, and
Oh, okay.
so I used to do them and I used to love them. And then one day I walked into Barnes and Noble and it's like the front
They were-
display is all of these like Sudoku
oh,
books.
you were doing Sudokus before it became a big deal.
Yeah, I was doing it before it
Uh,
was cool.
before it was cool.
Or maybe it's
Oh,
never
so,
cool, but yes, before it was a big deal.
but you were like you were like in, so it's funny you say puzzles and these card games. And so you like what? What is that? That's like because that's not all it's like some sort of problem solving type of games or something.
Yes, absolutely. I love doing problem solving, things that really make me think. In middle school, the other thing that I really loved was theater. I
Oh,
I was really we had a musical that we did every year. I was in it all 3 years. I was the lead when I was in eighth grade.
oh,
That was my absolute favorite thing was theater.
oh, wow. Did you do that in high school also?
I did a little bit in high school. By high school, kind of the sports had taken over and it was hard to do both. But I would do the winter, they would do 3 productions in high school, and I would do the winter one when I didn't have another
Oh,
stuff going on.
okay. So high school. So what do you like to do when you're in high school? What if I could have gone into the yeah, so first tell me that. What did you like to do when you were in high school?
Oh gosh. So by the time we got to high school, it was all about the extracurriculars. You're thinking about the college applications and you have to look all well-rounded. And so in the fall, I did golf. In the spring, I did tennis. I did, mock trial and newspaper. Lots of different extracurricular activities. I feel like my life in high school really revolved more around the extracurriculars than it did around the academics.
So from the very beginning, you kind of were always thinking about, I want to get into the best school I can get into. That you had always that was sort of been that was a goal early on.
It was always that I just wanted to do as well academically as we could. And like, this is what people told us we needed to do to get into college.
Okay, got it, got it. Uh, well, so what would have if I could have been like eavesdropping on in the teacher lounge and they were talking about Jessica Brown and this is what I think she's gonna be doing with her life. What do you think other your teachers saw in you?
So that's a great question. I really don't know in high school, but in the early grades, I was very into math. I loved math. I had some
Mm.
wonderful teachers who really challenged me in math in elementary school, and then in middle school, I had a wonderful math counts coach. I did the like national math competitions, and I was really into that. And so I think that at that stage, they probably would have thought something to do with math. Once I got to high school, I'm not sure. The math once you got to high school, the math was more rote, and it wasn't so much about challenging yourself and trying to problem solve. It was just like learn an algorithm and solve a problem. And so I wasn't as interested in math anymore at that point. So I'm not sure what they would have thought.
You didn't feel you liked that figuring out feeling?
Yes, yeah. And so once it became easy, it wasn't interesting anymore.
Right, right. Oh. Well, so did you take any econ in high school?
It's funny you ask. So my mom had a friend who said, well, maybe Jessica would be interested in economics. And I had no idea what economics was. But the way that the courses worked in high school, we had an economics course at the high school. I wasn't super interested in taking it, but then they had community or the local university, the University of Southern Maine. You could take classes there, but in order to take classes there, you had to exhaust all the ones at the high school. And so
Mm,
because our family friend said maybe I'd be interested in economics, we looked into taking these classes at the local university. And so I took the economics class in high school. It was taught by the football coach.
yeah, right.
Every Friday we played Monopoly. So the main thing I learned was if you play Monopoly without ones, you can finish the game in a class period. And outside of that, we read a book.
Without ones.
Yeah, no, that's how you speed the game up is if you
You
play
make it
without
go
one and you just round everything.
fast. That's hilarious.
Yeah. So outside of that, he just did some basically personal finance, and we read like The Earth is Flat, I think.
I don't know
Um,
what that is.
and
Okay.
so then I took intro to macro at the community college,
Mm.
and I don't know, it was fine, but I didn't love it.
There wasn't anything you liked.
Right. So at this point, I thought that econ was like finance and macro.
Right, 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 right. So it leaves no impression.
No.
Yeah. Okay. So what did you want to be when you grew up, right when you were graduating?
Oh, when I graduated from high school, I don't think I had a great idea. I was really interested in policy. So I had gotten into the West Wing, and so policy was very interesting to me. And I thought I wanted to do something with policy, but I wasn't really sure what that looked like.
Ah,
Um, the one thing I knew I wanted to do was be a mother. So that was like that was the one thing I was sure about.
ah, oh, both of those. So, uh, but you were thinking about, well, were you thinking maybe about graduate school then? Was that on?
Absolutely not.
Okay.
No, it
Did you
was not on
know
my radar at all.
did you know anybody growing up in your family that have gone to graduate school?
No.
Okay.
My mom had a master's degree, but no PhDs.
Got it. Got it. So then you go to Notre Dame. That must have been cool to be excited to get into Notre Dame. That was so hard to get in. You had worked so hard.
Yeah. No, it
Yeah.
was fun. I had applied to just 5 schools. And actually at the time I thought my top choice was Georgetown and because I was interested in policy. And
Right.
I did get into Georgetown as well, but I visited Georgetown and I felt like I didn't fit in there. It was very preppy and not who I was. And
Mm.
then I visited Notre Dame and I felt like I could fit in right away. So,
Hey, so what were you like? You're not preppy. Then what does that mean?
oh.
What were you like?
I mean, I was still very nerdy.
Huh?
Um, but also into the sports, and I was super excited about the football team, which in my 4 years was a huge disappointment. But
Uh,
but it was exciting to be there. I said my dad had 2 daughters, and he had passed down, the cribbage to me. He also passed down the football to me. We spent a lot of time watching football, so I was really excited
oh,
about that
really?
aspect.
What team did he like? He must have
The
loved.
Patriots.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
and so it was a perfect time to get me into football. I mean, the Patriots were, I mean, they won their first Super Bowl when I was in like 7th grade or so.
Oh, wow. Oh, so you've been a part of their journey a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely.
Oh,
Yeah.
that's cool.
I still remember the moment when Bledsoe got injured and had to go out, and then Tom Brady came in, and the
Oh my
rest
gosh,
is history.
that's awesome. That's awesome. Well, so you get there and well, how quickly do you find economics? Because you end up having this double major in math and econ.
Not quickly.
Really?
No, so I was interested in policy, and so I thought that the right direction was to major in political science. And so
Oh,
I came in as a political science major, and you still have all these like gen eds that you have to take. And so for the math, I could have taken some like non-math math class for liberal arts majors,
yeah.
but I had had enough of the like boring math from high school. And so I actually signed up for honors calculus, which is
Mm,
a proofs-based calculus class. So essentially
mm.
real analysis, my first semester. And
At your first semester at Notre Dame, you're in real analysis.
it was essentially real analysis. It was called
Yeah.
honors calculus.
Right.
Yeah.
Did you,
So
okay, keep going.
yeah, so it was mostly gen eds in the first
Wait, is real
semester.
analysis, does it have that feeling of discovery?
Oh yeah.
You
It was
started to
so
feel stuff
cool.
again. You started
Yes,
feeling, yeah,
yes, I will
okay.
not. Yeah, the professor for that class was Claudia Polini, so a female professor, which was really exciting as well. And
Uh,
she was so excited about it, and I thought it was so cool. I mean, we derived all of calculus. We started with the field axioms, and then you just like have calculus. I loved it.
mm. And so you hadn't felt that in a while, that
No, I
intimate
hadn't.
area of math that had gotten so algorithmic.
Exactly, exactly. And so math was exciting again.
Mm. So then you were like, I'm going to major in mathematics, but you've got
Well,
this interested in, okay, keep going.
yeah, so it wasn't quite that direct. So I started taking some political science classes, and after a couple semesters of that, I realized that political science, it wasn't actually about policy, it was about the science of politics, and
Yeah.
that was not as interesting to me. Um,
Mm.
and so then I didn't know what to do. I knew I
And
didn't want
then
to be
what?
a political science
Okay,
major.
wait, real quick. So you develop in college this like distinction between the science of politics and public policy. So what does it start to be for like a young person? What is it that you start to realize that you are interested in if it's not political science? How would you have said it back then?
I was interested in the policies themselves and
Mhm.
understanding what was the best policy,
I see. Got it.
as
And you
opposed
did,
to everything that goes into getting a policy passed, which is more
right.
the political science.
Right. So then you experience that and after, but you still have that burning, you still have that desire to do policy, but you can't do it in political science now.
Right, that's exactly right.
Oh, okay. So what happens?
So then I don't know what to major in, so I decide, well, I really enjoyed these math classes, and so I'll be a math major. Turns out it's not boring.
Right. Yeah.
And I added a public policy minor. And so, as part of the public policy minor, I had to take intro to micro.
Oh.
And so I take intro to micro, I think maybe spring of my sophomore year, something like that. And and I like it. It's math and it's thinking about, I don't know, human behavior. And so I think it's interesting, but I'm not in love with it yet.
But you only had to take one
That's
for
the, yeah.
for this policy minor. So you could have just done the math major policy minor, and you didn't even have like a big, big experience off of principles of micro. So what happens after that spring?
So I kind of happened into it because, if I could have filled up my schedule with all math classes, I probably would have.
Oh,
But it turns out there aren't that enough math classes to do that. And so I had to do other things too. And I don't want to take any lab-based science classes. I'm not good with my hands.
uh-huh.
I had taken those because it's a bachelor's of science in math. So I had taken some lab-based sciences. I knew I didn't want to do more of that. And but I also didn't want to take these arts and letters classes where I had to write essays and on topics I wasn't really interested in. And so I went back to, well, like I liked the econ because it had math and there's no lab, there's no essays. So I
You're
just started
thinking
taking
you
more
go
econ.
back to it. But are you going back to it because you're thinking about the major or just more classes?
No, I was literally just trying to fill my schedule.
Oh, okay. So this is like your junior year.
Yeah.
What do you take?
I took actually I took intermediate macro first, and then that would have been fall of junior year. I took intermediate macro. And then in the spring, I took intermediate micro and um, econometrics. This it's not quite coming together, but something like that.
Yeah,
And it was in econometrics that I was like, oh my gosh, this is what I've been looking for all along. Um,
really?
yeah, I
Who taught you econometrics?
Bill Evans.
Oh, of course. Yeah.
Yes.
So he probably
And
taught it. So you're probably not just getting econometric theory, you're getting program evaluation.
exactly, exactly. So we learned the econometrics, but everything came with examples of these econ papers. And
Mm.
like that is what really blew my mind. And I was like, wait, this is exactly what I was looking for.
Oh, wow. Wow. So what happens during through the kind of the journey of that class? You decide you're going to declare to be, I mean, you've already taken a ton of these, you're even taking all these intermediate classes. So you
Mhm.
were already kind of a default econ major at this point, a little bit.
Right. Well, so it turns out to take any more econ classes, I had to declare a major. I had
Mm.
taken all the classes that were open to non-majors.
Oh,
And so I declared a major so I could take more
you could
econ.
take more. And you love, so you love, so what were you, so do you get involved with the lab for economic opportunities while you're there?
So Leo had not started yet. Yeah, it started soon after I graduated. Funny story, my husband was actually very involved with that. So he was an econ and poli sci major at Notre Dame. And in his first job after college, he worked for Catholic Charities USA. And
Mm.
Leo was originally a partnership between Notre Dame and CCUSA. And my husband was like the point of contact at CCUSA for the formation.
Yeah, I remember that. Okay. Oh, that's cool. So so did y'all know, did you, just out of curiosity, did you know your husband during college?
Oh, yeah, we were dating.
Oh, okay, okay. Um, so well, so then is there a point that shifts and it goes from just I'm gonna be declaring a major in econ to I want to be an economist?
Not for a long time because I just didn't see graduate school as an option. I don't know, but getting a PhD, that was for like really smart people or something. And I
Yeah.
didn't think it was something that I could do. It wasn't on my radar at all.
Mm.
But Bill Evans thought it should be.
He did? He said
He
stuff to you?
did. Yeah,
Oh,
and he wasn't it wasn't just a one-time thing. You know, he mentioned it at one point and I was like, "Oh, yeah, sure. Okay, I can get a PhD in econ." The so I took those honors math classes my first year at Notre Dame. Those professors also told me I should think about a PhD in math. And so I'm just
oh.
thinking, oh, this is what professors tell their students.
Right. Right, right.
And I knew a math PhD, like that was not going to work.
Right.
And so I think that caused me to kind of discount it when Bill told me I should get an econ PhD because I was like, well, I've already had this conversation in a different department.
But well, he keeps at you.
He does, yeah. So as a math major, I didn't know what I was going to do after I graduated. All
Mhm.
the other math majors were becoming actuaries, and so I started taking the actuarial exams. I had an internship, and I got a job, with the place I had an internship at, to be an actuary. But no, Bill kept going at it. In fact, they had a reception for economics majors at graduation, and he even went to my parents and said she should get a PhD in economics.
Wow. Were you doing more stuff with him outside of that class? Or is it just conversations?
So after econometrics, he reached out to me and asked if I wanted to do this like special studies class that he has. So there's a prize at Notre Dame for I don't know, it's like the best. It's basically for an econ paper.
Mm.
for an undergrad. And so he had a special studies class that is basically just like guiding a group of students to write one of these papers to submit to the contest. And
Oh.
so he approached me about being in that class, and I said, sure. And so we worked together in that.
Would you write your paper? And you won?
Excuse me?
Did you
Oh,
win
I
the?
won. I got an honorable mention, which
Oh,
was
good.
a
Congratulations.
monetary prize.
What'd you write your paper on?
It was about the quantity quality trade-off and whether it was different for boys and girls in terms of
You were thinking about kids even in college?
oh yeah.
Oh, that
I've
was
always
like immediately what you were like. I want. So what you had read some of these papers. So Bill's because did you read his paper with Josh Angrist on the family size? Y'all
yes.
just so
Yeah, so
you're
Ingerson Evans was in our econometrics class.
so you're reading about children papers,
Yes.
and you had also wanted to be a mother. Is like
Mhm.
this was a natural attachment that you had immediately?
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, huh. Well, so does Bill tell you? So you graduate. What do you do when you graduate?
So I took this job as an actuary. Bill told me I was going to hate it. Um, and I was said, fine, maybe I will, but I'm going to try it first before I spend 6 years of my life in graduate school.
Oh, so you were open to the PhD,
I was, yeah. I didn't really think I was going to go down that path, but it was in the back of my mind.
right? Okay, keep going.
Yeah, so I was an actuary, and he was right. I did kind of hate it.
Uh-huh.
It was back to like being kind of boring. And I was in a group that most firms don't have, but it was a modeling group. And so I was doing a lot of coding. And so I actually didn't mind my specific job, but I looked around at the jobs that other people were doing. And I was just thinking, this is not what I want to be doing with my life.
It's the you're kind of going back, you're regressing a little bit because it's that algorithmic math, non-discovery math stuff that you said you could do, but it didn't do anything for you.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Yeah. And so as I was doing that, I thought about my options and I was like, well, I could keep being an actuary. And I thought, if I keep doing this, as soon as I have kids, I'm going to want to quit my job and stay home.
Mm,
And I actually originally, asked what I wanted to do when I grew up. I think in the back of my mind, I always thought I would be a stay-at-home mom.
mm.
And but when I actually thought about it and I got to that point, I realized that I wanted more of that intellectual stimulation and maybe I didn't want to follow that path.
Mhm.
And so that's when I decided to apply to grad school.
When is that? 2 years after you graduate or 1 year?
So I 1 year after I graduated is when I applied, and then of course it's 2 years before you actually enroll.
When do you start school? Like 2014, 2013?
Yeah, I started at Princeton in 2013.
2013. So had you had Bill told you Princeton was like the best place like for labor, or like he said, like did you know it's what a incredible history it had?
No, I had no idea.
Huh.
I
So you
could look
just
at the U.S. news rankings, and that's all I knew.
yeah. So you just were like I'm going and what did you talk to him at all or talk to anybody at all about how do I make decisions between all these schools or
Yeah, so when I was interviewing at grad school, I of course reached back out to Bill again, and he gave me a list of schools to apply to.
yeah.
And I looked them up in the US news rankings and I was like, this is insane. And I was like,
Yeah.
look, if I don't get into any of them, I'll just keep doing what I'm doing. So I've got a backup plan.
Right. Right.
And when he originally gave me the list, I did not apply to all of them because I said, well, I don't want to be in New York City, so I don't want to apply to Columbia or NYU, and I don't want to go to California, so I'm not going to apply to Stanford or Berkeley. He was like, Jessica. He was willing to like let the New York City schools go, but he was like, you have to apply to Stanford and Berkeley.
Oh, he really believed in you.
Yeah, well, I mean, I got the list from him, so
Yeah. Yeah. So then, well, so how do you end up deciding on Princeton? I mean, that must have been so cool to get that Princeton offer.
yeah, it was so exciting. I mean, I wasn't expecting it at all. And So that was really cool. And of course I knew the professors who were there, and they were the professors, especially Alan, who I had been reading their papers. That was what was in our econometrics class,
Mm.
uh, yeah, Card and Krueger and English and Krueger and Krueger and
So you had
Whitmore.
read a lot of Kruger's papers in that class.
Yeah. So that's basically
Anybody
what I knew.
else? Anybody else that was there still?
I had
A lot of
read,
people had left that I'm thinking of in my head. It's like
yeah,
it's a new cohort, I guess. Alan would be the connecting tissue between the old and the new. I guess Orly also.
yeah. So I knew of Dave Lee, and so he was there, and then I knew CC Rouse,
Yeah.
but then CC Rouse was a dean of the Woodrow Wilson School, and then Dave Lee, as soon as I got there, was immediately provost or vice provost or something.
Yeah. Right. So you get there. So what's it like? What's those first years like? I mean, you're so good in mathematics, so maybe that first year was was it rote? Those hard econ classes, they weren't rote. It was discovery stuff.
Yeah, no, they weren't rote for sure, because it's still a lot of proofs, right? And anytime you have
Yeah.
to come up with a proof, it's not so rote. Uh,
Yep.
I had no idea what I was getting into. I
Mm,
yeah, I had no idea. I showed up. The first thing is you take the math camp exam. So
mm,
I had just gotten married that summer, and we like literally flew back from the honeymoon, and like days later, I'm taking this like math camp
mm,
placement test, and I thought, oh well, I'm good at math, like this will be fine. And I looked at the exam, and there were like two sub questions that I even knew what they were asking. This was not math that I had ever seen before.
mm.
And and so I was like, oh no, what have I got myself into? I just sat there waiting for someone else to turn their exam in because I didn't want to be on first. Nothing I could do. I didn't know what these questions were asking.
Oh my gosh. So that what does that mean if you don't do good on the math camp? Was that means you got to
That
take
just
all
means you have to take the math,
you got to take the real class.
or whatever it was.
Yeah. Right. So
Yeah.
then well so when do you meet Dr. Kruger?
I think not until second year, when we were taking labor.
Second year. He teaches your labor class?
Well, it's kind of a group effort. We had a lot of people teaching labor. So in the fall, we had Alex Moss and Will Dobby, and then
Mm,
Roland Fryer had a couple weeks he was visiting.
okay.
And then in the spring, we had Alan and Orly.
In the spring you had Alan and Orly.
Yeah.
Oh, the two of them together taught this class?
They like one did like half the semester, one did the other half.
Well, so what are they like? How are they similar and how are they different as professors in front of the room?
Oh, that's interesting that you asked that. I mean, Orly's obviously he's much older, and so he has a kind of a different style. He hands us, we get notes that are like handwritten notes that he's copied for us, and so that's very different. And Alan always wanted to relate everything to when his work at the White House. He would always tell us
Oh,
about what
really?
happened when I was at the White House.
Oh, that must have been kind of cool for you, given you were so interested. Well, he's also like this is how the sausage is getting made, but still, you were like that must have still been so cool just to hear his insider experience and that he's also kind of so similar to you.
Yeah, no, I thought it was really cool to take a class with someone and meet someone who, I mean, he those papers, and I didn't understand it at the time, like the credibility revolution, all of that. Like that was why I was interested in economics, and so
Mm.
it's really cool to have him.
Oh, that's how you interpret it now?
Yeah,
That it was the credibility revolution might have been the hook for you,
yeah, because that's what I was interested in. I was interested in evaluating policy,
right?
and without the credibility revolution, it's not you can't do it as well.
Yeah. Well, so how does it work at Princeton? All right, so real quick, remind me, I never like I know about the industrial relations section, but that doesn't mean I always understand what it means to be in it. So are you in the section?
So after second year, you write a paper. You're basically supposed to write it over that second summer, and then it's due sometime in the fall of third year. So it's called a third year paper.
Mm,
And so if your advisor for that paper is in the section, then you're in the section.
okay. Okay. So your advisor's Alan?
Yes.
You
Yeah.
asked him to be your advisor or what? What's the deal? How's that work?
Yeah, no, I went and I asked him to be my advisor. I was super intimidated.
Yeah.
At the time, idea generation is super hard. And so the company I had worked for as an actuary did disability insurance. So I thought, well, maybe I'll do something on disability insurance. This is just something Alan had touched before. And so I went to him and was like, yeah, maybe I'll do something on disability insurance.
Yeah. Yeah. Is that what you end up doing?
Kind of.
Okay. And so what's he like as an advisor? That at the beginning part, what's he like?
Oh, you know, at the beginning, I was always very intimidated by him, so I didn't go see him
Right.
very often, maybe not as often as I should. But he's always very insightful, and one thing that I really appreciated was that he actually looked through my slides and gave me advice on the presentation. And so I always got the impression that like the presentation and how his advisees looked externally, well, and internally to the rest of the section was really important to him. And
Mm,
so because of that, he helped prepare me really well for that.
okay.
And so I remember, so actually I had a baby that second year summer. And so I had a deadline extension on that third year paper. So I didn't turn it until the spring. And everyone has to present the third year paper. And so
Mhm.
I went to him that week when I had my presentation. And I think he was the one who said that he would look at my slides. And so I brought my slides and he helped me a ton with the presentation and how to format it. And then he said, I think there's these three questions that people are going to ask. And so you should be able to answer all three. And I think this one in particular is what Orly is going to ask you.
Mm.
And so then we get to the labor lunch that I'm
That
presenting.
make an impression on you? That he could communicate that kind of thing, that he was helping you in that way?
Yeah, I mean, I thought it was crazy that, this person has just been advising President Obama and now he's here going through my slides.
Right. Yeah, that had to have been crazy.
Yeah, so that was super crazy to me.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, I didn't even think of that. Wow. Or just all of it. Yeah, right. And he's given a lot of attention. He's given a lot of thought to it. It must have felt really weird.
Yeah, no, it was really weird, but much appreciated. So we got to the actual seminar, and I'm up there to present. And actually, so Steve Levitt was visiting that
Yeah.
semester. I I hadn't really been in touch because I had been on maternity leave, so I hadn't really been in touch with what was going on in the section, and I don't even think I knew he was visiting. And so Steve Levitt walks in the room, and I'm like, "Oh my gosh!" I like want to melt into the floor because this is someone else that I know. Um, but I felt good or better because Alan had gone through my slides and helped me with it. And I believe it was Steve Levitt asked one of the three questions that Alan said someone was going to ask. And then Orly did ask the question that Alan said he would ask. And so after that presentation, I was super impressed.
So is the environment for presenting at Princeton, is it like, would you say what's it like? Because like if you like for instance, Chicago has the reputation of being like a little intense, like a lot of aggressiveness, and it's just part of the deal. And so you hear about all these like seminar cultures, but I'm curious what how would you describe to like another economist? Oh well, at Princeton it's kind of like this for a student even or you.
Yeah. Well, so as a student, it was intimidating because you're going up in the front of the room in front of all these super smart people.
Yeah,
And I would say that, everything, all of the comments that they're making and all the questions that they ask are all geared toward like improving your paper. And so I always felt like they had my best interest in mind in terms of trying to make this the best that it can be.
yeah,
But that can also feel kind of intimidating or, they're not going to hold anything back, right?
right,
Yeah.
right, right.
But
Well, so
it's like friendly.
but there's no childcare. You're not doing any is childcare back in your head at all?
No, I wasn't really thinking about it, except that um, we had to have childcare for
Right.
our child.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And so
Yeah.
I have encountered the market for the first time and found it kind of quirky. And so that's kind of in the back of my mind, but not anything that I'm actively working on.
Mm. Well, so what do you write? What is your dissertation end up being about?
Oh, I think it's 3 essays in public economics.
Is it any of it childcare?
Yes. So the job market paper is.
Job market paper is. Okay. How do you get this idea?
So I knew from encountering the childcare market that providers make the most profit from the oldest kids. So they're not so interested in caring for my 1-year-old, but if I had a 4-year-old, they would love
Could you
it.
back up real quick, Jessica, just for the sake of anybody that's like international, could you just
Mhm.
sort of describe what is this childcare market that you're encountering?
Sure. So
And
in the
is there a
United
lot of heterogeneity inside a childcare market?
Hmm. Yeah, so in the United States, this is basically all private pay. So families are paying themselves, which is different from other countries where there's more government childcare. And then, yeah, so there's the center-based market, which is more highly regulated. Kids are cared for in a non-residential building, usually in classrooms separated by age. So, my kid's in a 12 to 18-month classroom, for example. And then there's home-based providers. They're not as regulated. So I mostly focus my search on the center-based providers. That
So
made me
you're
so
focusing on the center
yeah, for my personal
for
search.
this project. Oh, for your personal search.
Yeah,
Got
I
it.
mean it
Okay.
is ultimately for the project as well, but
Oh, it is for the project too. Okay, keep going.
yeah, yeah. So
So they
I
make most of their money. How did you know that? How did you know they made most of their money from the older kid?
so basically every classroom has 2 teachers in it, and the number of kids varies. And so an infant classroom will have like 8 kids, whereas a 4-year-old classroom might have like 20.
Mm,
And the prices are a little bit higher for the infants, but they're not really that much higher when you consider, how much more labor costs per kid there is.
mm.
And you can also tell when you visit a provider.
The marginal cost of a little kid's higher because you have to have two people.
So because you can only have 8 kids, 8 infants in the classroom versus like 20 in a 4-year-old classroom.
Oh, huh. So you noticed that you were a PhD student, you're a mom, you're an economist, and you just kind of started noticing these things.
Yeah, and it's just a fact that I kind of tucked in the back of my mind. I wasn't thinking of doing any work on it.
Okay.
Um, Yeah, but then I saw an article somewhere about a pre-K expansion, a free pre-K expansion. And my very selfish first thought was, thank goodness they're not doing that here because then my childcare for my toddler would be more expensive.
Mm,
But again, that was just like it was still just an idea. It wasn't
mm,
wasn't anything I was necessarily going to work on.
mm.
Um, And I had at this time, so I had done my 3rd year paper, which was like it was like a mandated benefits paper thinking about
It
um
would be more expensive because it would shift well, it's shifting more of the kids outside of that center.
yeah, so if you can't
Average
attract
costs, they have to
hmm
cover those average costs.
right, yeah. So if you can't attract those 4-year-olds where you were making profit, then you're gonna have to do something else, like increase prices on the younger kids.
Oh, you immediately thought that?
Yeah.
Okay, keep going. But so you read that in the news.
I read about a pre-K expansion in the news, yeah.
Okay, keep going. Sorry.
And so I had done the 3rd year paper, it was a mandated benefits paper about something that had interested me about mandated benefits is that if people don't know about their mandated benefit, then they can't use it.
Mhm.
Uh, which, and also they're not going to take it into account in their labor supply decision. Um, and so that could lead to some deadweight loss. But on the
Mhm.
other hand, if they don't know about the benefit, then there'll be less moral hazard. And so there's kind of this trade-off that if you tell people about it, then they can take it into account in their labor supply decision, but there might be more moral hazard increasing the program cost. So, and that's like what the 3rd year paper was.
Yeah.
And then I did a second chapter about the effect of a long-term care information campaign on long-term care insurance take-up. So long-term care insurance was a specific product that I had worked on when I was an actuary. So I was still like very much sticking to what I had learned when in my previous job as an actuary.
Got it. Okay.
Yeah. And then my would have been my spring of my fourth year. Yes, spring of my fourth year because I am pregnant again and I need a job market paper topic, preferably before the baby is born, so I can hit the ground running when I come back from maternity leave.
Yeah.
And Alan was actually on leave that semester, so
What
I
year is that? What year is that?
let's see, that would have been 2017 or been like the 2016-2017 year.
He's on leave? What, like at Uber?
Yeah. I don't know actually. I
Yeah.
pulled up his CV recently to try to figure it out, and I just know he wasn't around that semester.
He's like chief economist at Uber for a minute, I think, or something
Yeah.
like that. That would have
Yeah.
been the mid teens. Yeah, that's
Yeah.
funny. So he leaves, but
Yeah, I
he's
mean I could contact him when I wanted to, but maybe he was on sabbatical. Like he was traveling a lot. He wasn't really around that semester.
okay.
But I need a job market paper topic.
Hmm.
And so I met with Ilyana Kuzemko, and I gave her what I thought were my three best ideas. And she's super nice, and I could tell she wasn't super excited about any of them, but was willing to work with kind of the best of the three that she thought I had given her. But I decided to kind of pull out, the ones that I thought were maybe not as good, but to see if she liked any of them.
Yeah.
And one of them was this, pre-K childcare trade-off.
Expansion.
Yeah,
Right, right,
yeah.
right.
And she immediately was like, that is super cool. Has anyone worked on this? Has anyone even talked about this pricing? And I was, well, no, they haven't. But in my mind, because when I saw that pre-K article, I immediately thought about this. To me, it was obvious and therefore not interesting.
Right, right, right.
In retrospect, I see why it was interesting, but as a PhD student, I couldn't see it.
But Jessica, I'm curious now when you say it like that because I want to pry myself. If this is an incorrect kind of view of you, I want to get rid of it. But I keep going back to thinking about how you like those Sudoku puzzles and you love that, and that you love discovery math, but not, this other type of math. And it's kind of like use that David Otter distinctions. It's like you really did good at the non-routine cognitive work,
Mm-hmm.
the stuff that a computer couldn't do, which
Yes.
like they could do something algorithmic. And so is that why you didn't notice the paper? Because it seemed like you already had figured it out?
Maybe. Yeah, it
Huh.
could be.
It's like, but is that but were the other projects like they were things that you were like had the potential to be this thing you hadn't figured out yet? The ones that you weren't that she wasn't super excited about?
Oh, yeah, maybe. I feel, yeah, it could be. I I think, and I think maybe part of it was just I hadn't seen any papers like the one that I was proposing, and the other ones were, more similar to other things I had seen,
Hmm.
which now also, that makes this other idea that ends up being the job market paper more interesting because it's more unique.
Right.
Um, but I hadn't seen anything quite.
Yeah. I mean, I've never seen anything like that at all. To be honest, I really hadn't. I wasn't expecting. And when you said it was, I was kind of embarrassed. I had to think about it, like why it was obvious, because you had seen it instantly. And so, what do you do? Where do you get the date? What are you gonna? Because I was assuming this like pre-K thing that you read about was brand new, but are you gonna go back and use something in the past?
Yeah, so lots of states had expanded pre-K, and it was a matter of finding a state where I could get data on both pre-K and childcare,
Uh,
which I hadn't done anything in childcare before, so I didn't realize how difficult that would be, and I ended up just getting really lucky. But I had explored a few different states, a few different state programs to try to get both of these pieces, and had a lot of trouble doing that. But eventually in New York City, I was able to get both pieces. Um, one through the pre-K through the Wayback Machine, and I got these like PDF view books that they would have given to parents to try to pick a pre-K program that I then, converted to data I could actually use. And then through a FOIA request for the child on the child care side.
Wait, so what kind of data are you looking for? What is the experiment exactly?
So I ultimately use areas that are closer to a new preschool versus farther away from a new preschool to look at how the license capacity for infants and toddlers changes in
Oh,
response to the introduction of pre-K.
what's the regression? Like what's the one like what will be on the left-hand side exactly?
Number of slots in an area.
Number of slots in an area. Because that's what you were saying would happen in your town if pre-K opened up, public pre-K opened up, your thing would get smaller. There'd be more slots. Is that what you're saying?
So what I had thought initially was about the pricing side, and there's no pricing data. But
Ah,
another possible response is, well, if I can't attract the 4-year-olds, my center's not viable, so I'm going to shut down. And that means
yes.
I can't have infants and toddlers or 4-year-olds. So that
Right.
reduces the number of licensed slots for the younger kids.
Oh, is that a competition effect? It's not, right? It is a competition effect, but was that how you were thinking about it?
Um, I was just
Some
thinking
kind
of,
of like some kind of crowd out thing or something.
yeah, I was thinking of it more about crowd out.
Huh.
I just called it unintended consequences.
Well, so what do you find?
I found that a new preschool reduced the number of licensed slots for kids ages 0 to 2. So that's how the licensing data was split out, was number of slots for kids 0 to 2, number of slots for kids 2 to 5.
So is Alan still alive when you're working on the paper? Does he see it?
Yes. Yes. Yeah. So he, funny story. So Ileana had picked out this paper as like the most promising of my ideas, but I hadn't talked to Alan about it yet. And I'm not sure I talked to him about it until after I come back from maternity leave. And so after I've kind of gotten the ball rolling a little bit,
Mm.
and he doesn't like it.
He
He
doesn't.
no. And it's not fully, I don't know how much is him not liking it and him thinking that it's not going to be a good sell on the job market, since it is my job market paper.
Mm,
But he said 2 things. One, he thought it was too niche. He said that only mothers are going to care about this.
mm,
And then, which, maybe that is how he felt, but like I totally understand as an advisor saying,
mm.
this is not going to give you a good job on the market because people aren't going to be interested enough in it.
Yeah.
So that was his first thing. And the second thing he said was, you're not going to find anything.
Really?
Yeah.
So
And
what did
and
he go ahead?
I was gonna say, so, and they often talk to us about, you have a limited time in grad school, like work on a project where even a 0 would be interesting because you're gonna
Right.
do all this work. And if you get to the end and you have a 0 and a 0 is not interesting in this particular question, then what are you gonna do at that point?
Yeah.
And I think he felt that a 0 wasn't interesting because other people weren't thinking about this.
Oh, that's an interesting way to think. He works backwards from the zero.
Yeah.
Huh. Works back. He both isn't personally, he's thinking people aren't interested in it, and he says it's gonna be a zero, and that's fine only if people care about it, and he doesn't think enough people are. Oh, so but you'd already done a lot on it.
Yeah, so it's funny. So at this point, so we had to present every semester in the
Yeah.
labor lunch.
Okay.
And so my labor lunch presentation is starting to come up in a few weeks. He wants me to present something different. He doesn't want me to present this. And I mean, it is very early stage. I don't even have all of the data yet. And he kept dropping by my office like at least once a week to be like, have you thought about this idea? Have you thought about that idea?
Yeah.
And whenever I met with him to show him what I had done, he'd be like, he'd give me comments on what I had done, and then he'd be like, "Have you thought about this other idea?"
Yeah. Had y'all's relationship progressed where it was like a little bit more familial, or does he still feel like like a superstar or whatever?
I mean, I'd say a little bit, but he still, to me, definitely feels a little bit superstar. But just because we've been around each other more, a little
Yeah.
bit less so. He's working on his like rockonomics book at this point.
Oh, yeah.
And maybe if that were something I'm more interested in, then that would have been helpful.
Right, 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 right.
Because he liked
Right.
to talk about that. It's funny because he would start like every meeting with talking about what he was doing on a Rockonomics book. And I was not super interested in this topic, but I would try to feign interest. But as a professor now, I totally understand. Like, I would love to just take 10 minutes with my students and just tell them about what I'm working on.
Right, 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 right. Okay, well, so you end up presenting in this lunch.
Yeah. And so ultimately, I had to say, Alan, this is the only thing that I can present. This is the only thing I have ready to present in the labor lunch. And so this is what I'm going to present.
Yeah.
And so I presented the labor lunch, and I am on the title side, and I haven't even started talking when I get the first question from the audience, which is, why would pre-K affect the childcare market for younger children? Because that's my title, right? Something about the unintended consequences of pre-K on the childcare market for infants and toddlers. And I didn't even get to start talking before someone was like, why would this matter? So it wasn't so obvious.
Jessica, is it because I'm not a mom or something? I'm gonna have to sit and think about it a lot more. I mean, is it was that a common reaction? Have you found it to be a common reaction on the job market and with other people that they don't immediately see the connection?
Initially, yes.
Huh.
Now lots of people are talking about it.
Oh. Okay, keep going.
So and the thing about Alan, like I was saying, I really felt like he really cared about the perception of his students to, the faculty, rest of the faculty and externally. And so during presentations, he will defend you, which is interesting. It's not something that other advisors will do, but he'll like step in if he thinks he needs to. And so he's like, well, like she's going to get to that. Just give her a couple slides.
Oh, wow. Huh. Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah, so I give the labor lunch, and people were very engaged. They thought this was a very interesting question, an interesting market. And so after that, he was like, that people were actually very interested in this. And so yes, you can keep doing this project.
Oh, so did you have results yet?
So I had mentioned there's like the center-based market and then the home-based market. I
Yeah.
had some stuff on the home-based market, but it was very preliminary. I didn't have the center-based data yet.
So what year is it? 2017?
Yeah, 2017. It's
Because you
either
graduate 2018 or you graduate 2019?
2019,
2019. So then when does Dr. Krueger pass away?
2019.
Right at the end. I seem to remember on Twitter it being that must have just been devastating.
Yeah, it was awful.
That must have been awful. I'm
Yeah,
so
so we had set my defense date, and he said he was going to be there May 16th, and then he died in March, and he wasn't there.
oh, uh, just can't even. And that must be a really lonely experience too, because that's not even something that anybody alive, even any other student has ever experienced. Must have been weird feelings.
Yeah, it was a little weird. You feel like an orphan in some sense, so like your advisor is not there anymore, and now you're on your own.
Right, right. Oh gosh.
But
Um,
I really appreciated Princeton, like, worked it out because he wasn't going to be at the defense, of course. And so
yeah,
normally that would mean he couldn't be on the committee. But Princeton kind of made an exception, and he is like my advisor of record at Princeton, which I really appreciated.
you're his last student.
Yeah, so me and David Cho. So David Cho in my year is also his advisee.
Wow. Um, well, so you go on the job market. You end up back in South Carolina. For some reason, I thought you were from South Carolina because of your accent, and now it's like, oh yeah, that's like a Maine accent. That couldn't be as further away. But so you hadn't been that far south before.
So those 2 years when I was an actuary, I lived in Tennessee,
Oh, where in Tennessee did you live?
in Chattanooga.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
Yeah.
the funny thing is, it's funny how things come full circle. That company I was working for in Chattanooga also has an office here in Columbia.
Mm.
And so when I was getting married, they were like, well, maybe your husband would have better luck finding a job in Columbia, South Carolina than in Chattanooga, Tennessee. Like, we could transfer you to that office. And I was like,
Oh,
no, no, I'm going to go to grad school.
okay.
Then I ended up back here.
That's funny. That's funny. Your husband's not an economist, right? He just did the
No.
on major. He did the double. Okay, got it.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, so you get the other thing that seems like your advisor passes away so tragically, and then you go to this new place, and then immediately COVID happens. That
Yeah,
must
almost immediately.
that must have been such a hard, or I don't want to put words in your mouth, but that must have been at least a just very different. I mean, I know we all went through COVID, but not everybody was a brand new assistant professor during COVID. Was that pretty disruptive? I mean, was that pretty harder to explain? That was harder. How was that hard compared to like anybody that hadn't been an assistant professor?
It was hard because we had just moved here and we really didn't have any networks. We didn't really know very many people. So it was already a little bit lonely, but we were going to make those connections. So actually, when we moved down here, my husband's job, he had graduated this master's degree from Princeton at the same time as I graduated my PhD. And his first job was in Washington, D.C. We knew it was a temporary thing, but he kind of needed to like work in DC to get the street cred, and then he would get another job. And so his job's in Washington, D.C. He's flying back and forth. He's gone Monday through Thursday up
Mm,
there. And I have this job here, and I have the two kids, and we have a nanny. And so I'm just surviving. And I'm thinking, look, like this job that my husband has is going to end in like a year, year and a half, something like that. And so I'm just going to make it through this first year, year and a half. And then we will go out and start meeting people and making friends and doing
yeah,
everything. My oldest
yeah.
is going to start, he was 4, so he was in like preschool, and then the following year he's going to be in kindergarten. I was like, oh well, he's going to start at the neighborhood school, and we'll meet the neighborhood families. Um, but that did not happen.
Ah. Well, so you continue to work on, you're still working on the childcare topics. Is it still feel as much like, does it feel like the Discovery feeling, these projects now?
Mostly. So one thing that I really liked about the job market paper is that I felt like I was innovating on the question. A lot of
Mm,
times you're innovating on the data or you're innovating on the methods. But I felt like I was asking a question that other people weren't asking.
yeah,
And so
right.
that made that really interesting. Uh,
Mm.
and to a certain extent, that's still true, or it was true for a while, just because it's an area that not as many people have worked on. And so there aren't as many people asking those questions. That's a little different now.
It's
Childcare
a
is a
much
little
more
more,
crowded space now.
I wouldn't call it like totally crowded, but there are definitely more people who are interested in childcare than there were before. Now that
Yeah,
it's been, in the news.
right.
Yeah,
Well,
but
so how does that feel? Does that, are you saying that because that changes things a little bit? Something about that makes it feel different?
it's a little different in that I prefer to work on a question that if I don't work on it, no one's going to work on it.
Got it.
And like
Got it.
I like to make that contribution. And
Right.
if
The
someone else is going
innovative
to work
in
on it, let them do it.
Yeah, right. Right. Oh, huh. That's
But
so
I do still feel
interesting.
like I was gonna say I do still feel like I am working on some things that other people wouldn't necessarily be thinking about.
What are you working on now?
So I'm starting kind of two what I hope are longer term research agendas that will hopefully have multiple papers come out of each one. And so one is about the effect of private equity on the childcare market. And so private equity has
Mm,
been moving into childcare. We know we have some papers from like the nursing home industry about the effect of private equity there. And so thinking about what it's doing in childcare,
interesting.
which is a
You've already started
huge,
that stuff?
excuse me.
You've already started collecting data and everything on that?
Yeah, so we're just in the data collection part right now. So we've gotten a couple. of grants to work on that because it's a really big data lift and purchasing data and then getting grad students to clean the data and merge the data across multiple different sources. And so is that project's really early.
Mm.
And then I have
Oh,
another.
that seems like a great area.
Yeah, no, we're really interested to see what happens. Because I mean, in the nursing home industry, you see mostly negative effects of
What's the
kind of,
on the quality of care?
yeah, exactly.
Mm.
But you know,
Measure what are you going to be measuring? What's your measure of quality?
so quality, um, we're getting some inspections data.
Oh,
Um, and then some states have like the quality ratings data, but I'm not sure exactly what that says about quality.
yeah, yeah. Are these different diffs when you do this kind of thing?
Yes.
You have like a center that never gets acquired, what, in other states, or how does it normally work?
So
You can do it.
we haven't actually run anything yet.
Yeah,
Still working on getting the data together. But you can look within a center, like centers that are acquired by PE at different times and look
yeah.
at like the time series. So like what happens before and after. But we also want to look at like what happens to the rest of the market around those firms. And
Are
so
these super profitable, these centers, these childcare centers?
that's a funny thing because when you talk to center directors, they'll tell you that it's not that they have like 2 to 3% profit margins, but if PE is coming in, there must be something there.
Mm.
That's a really interesting question to
Do you
try to
think is going
understand.
on? What do you think is going on?
I'm not sure.
Huh. They might be more efficient and they can squeeze more out or something like that.
Yeah, it may be. And I mean, different centers have different models. So the place that our oldest, where we went, sent our oldest at first, when I didn't know very much about childcare.
Yeah.
Their rooms were basically always at like the maximum number of kids that were allowed to be in that room, and they actually like over enrolled the classrooms since often kids are absent. And what happened is like if you end up with too many kids in a classroom, then they like bump like the oldest kid in that classroom. So if a classroom goes from 12 to 18 months, there are probably some kids in that classroom who are like 18, 19 months, like on the upper end. And then they would bump them up to the 18 to 24-month classroom in like the middle of the day, because the ratios, to get the ratios right. This is not great for kids. It's very disruptive. But this is like there's different models and different
It's
ways
on
of.
a 1 day thing though. It's like if it's too big, you just that day you get bumped up. It's not like a Mamie needs rule deal, is it? It's like where you're like permanent switching thing, or what is it?
Yeah, so this particular center, it was just that day.
That
As long as
day.
they needed you bumped up to the next classroom because of ratios, the kid
Uh,
would be there. But a
uh,
lot of centers don't do that. It's like if you're in a given classroom, you're just in that classroom.
yeah.
And so after that experience, I looked for a different one where you are actually in the same classroom with the same teachers, no matter what.
That's cool. That's cool working on that project. Well, what's the other research agenda?
So from my first encounters with the childcare market, I thought it was super strange how there were wait lists
Wait.
everywhere.
Uh,
Yeah. And to me as a PhD student, I'm thinking that means the market isn't clearing. You know, why can't I just get care when I need it?
mm,
And so that's kind of the motivation for the second set of papers that I'm working on.
mm.
Is why are there wait lists in the childcare market?
Huh. Why can't they expand? Do they not want to expand?
Because they
At
often are
the,
limited by building size.
it's by the building size?
Often.
They're constrained by because it would be an intensive margin. Wait lists, like why not is the wait you only start a new center, I guess, if the wait list is particularly bad or something. Permanent. Well, it's
Right.
gotta be
But it still raises the question like why don't they just increase their prices, right?
yeah, right.
Yeah. So I've been thinking about some different theories about that. The One that I'm working on right now is that actually it might just be profit maximizing to have a wait list, because you have to pay for most of the cost of having a classroom open, whether or not it's fully enrolled.
Yeah.
So if you have 7 babies versus 8, most of the costs are already paid for. So if I have a wait list, if I price low enough to generate a wait list, then I can reduce the probability of vacancies and maybe increase my profits.
Wow. These are really cool. Well, well, so I guess I really appreciate you and I really enjoyed this. I want to end with one thing. Um, I wonder if you had a time machine and you could go back and talk to yourself at an earlier time. Don't know when, I guess you could say, like, when would that time be? And what do you think what might be the one thing, that's like, obviously it's like you not say, hey, don't work on that project, but it's more like, something more that you feel like that you've learned that you sort of do wish you wouldn't have mind sharing with your younger self.
Oh, that's a good question. Um, so the first thing that I'm thinking about is just going back to me in grad school because I was super stressed. I was extremely stressed in grad school because you're trying to get a job. And are you going to get a job? I don't know. And I was very focused on getting an academic job. After being in the private sector for 2 years, I didn't want to work in the private sector. So I either wanted an academic job or a government job.
Mm.
Um, I mean, it would be nice if I could just go back and tell myself that it's going to be okay. You are going to get that
Right, right,
academic job that you wanted.
right.
But one thing that I've really appreciated about being here at South Carolina is, you don't need the top fives, right? And what I didn't think about then was that, in order to get top fives, it's not just about doing good work, but it's also about doing things that other people think is worthy of a top five, right? Like the question. And that can restrict the topics or the projects that you work on. And
Totally.
you can't work on everything that you might be interested in just because it might not get you a top five. And so
Right.
I think I kind of undervalued a job somewhere like here, where you don't need that.
Mm.
And I think understanding that would have been helpful, because I really enjoy that. Any project that I'm interested in doing, whatever I'm most interested in working on, I can do that without worrying about, is this going to be, a top five or an AJ.
Mm. Mm. That's that's really insightful. I hadn't thought about it that way, that the top five has that social thing. I didn't think of it quite that way. That's cool. We have a cool story, Jessica. I really appreciate you sharing it with me, and I appreciate you being t telling me so much about Dr. Krueger. Um, and I'm sorry you had to go through that. And anyway, well, I really appreciate you talking to me.
Well, thank you so much, Scott. It was a pleasure.
Building up a
Okay.
wall till it breaks. She hated when I called, but it's late. I hope I never